Next on Garden Line, we learn about different grasses native to South Dakota that can be used in the landscape.
Like all native grasses, these are very easy to propagate.
Funding for Garden Line is provided in part by your membership in the Friends of South Dakota Public Broadcasting. And by Swiftel Communications.
Hello and welcome to Garden Line. I'm Stephen Monk. Tonight is a special show as it is our last of this 29th season. We'll also go to the home of a native plant expert at SDSU who will highlight South Dakota's native grasses that can be used to accent yards and landscapes. And as always, our panel of lawn and garden experts are here to answer your questions with the most up-to-date information about gardening, lawn care, insects, trees, and a host of other lawn and garden-related concerns. So get ready to call in. The phone number for you to call is 1-866-595-SDSU. Again, that is 1-866-595-7378. Joining me in the studio to answer your questions is John Keykafer, Brookings County Extension Educator, David Graper, Extension Horticulturalist, Mike Meckning, Extension Weed Specialist, and John Ball, Extension Forestry Specialist. Helping to answer the phones tonight are the Watertown Master Gardeners. And remember, when you call in with your questions, please provide the phone volunteers with as much information as possible about your garden problem. Be ready to provide a description of the problem, when the problem first appeared, whether it's affecting any other surrounding plants, and moisture or and soil conditions that may exist. But first off, we're going to go around the table to hear from our panel on what is currently happening out there. And we're going to start with you, John Keykafer.
I brought in the standard insect for this time of year. I was out at State Fair this last week and we saw a number of these things that people kept telling me were bees hanging around. And these insects are not bees at all. These are yellow jackets. This would be kind of a common situation where people might encounter them. And if you do find them like this, you really don't want to take a drink of your sweetened beverage. They start coming to drinks like this at this time of year because the queen has died and they just kind of run amok. They're out looking for something to feed themselves. They're not feeding larvae anymore. When they're out feeding larvae, they're hunting other insects. And so at this point now, colony is starting to deteriorate and we're seeing them just out for themselves. When they are active, you'll see something like this. This is actually from underneath a sink in one of our parks, underneath one of those drinking faucets. And you'll see this activity coming and going from these sorts of things. And this is the time of year when we see a lot of that activity. Unfortunately, it's not the time of the year to do much about them. We just want to wait them out at this point, and we've got a few more weeks, maybe up to a couple months on them, but hopefully, 4 weeks to 6 weeks, something like that, and we'll just see them disappear. They end up dying off. They start a new colony next year, so they're not going to hang around and you won't have them necessarily in the same place. But if you do get out there and you start looking for them, they make some pretty good sized nests. I brought an example here of one. This is from a couple years ago now, and this was hanging in a shed. Nests this size will actually contain about 2,000 to 2,500 workers at the time. And you can see it's got an opening on it where they come and go. In this nest, that opening would actually hang down. It was hanging in the rafters, something like this, and they would come and go out of the bottom of that, kind of like we saw in the video where they're coming and going underneath that drinking fountain there. And if you do find one of these and you can get to it, you can definitely knock it down and try to take anything out of there, but you do want to use a lot of caution if you're handling them because you get that many and they can sting multiple times. They can do a lot of damage to a person.
John, what is that nest actually made out of?
This is actually a paper product, and what they end up doing is they chew up old wood and mix it with their saliva and produce their own paper. And so those variations that you see in color on it are produced by the different colors of the old dead wood.
Okay. And you mentioned, I mean, if somebody really wanted to remove that nest, and with the cooler temperatures, would that be an advisable time? The cooler the better versus warm heat of the day? Or
the cooler the better. And what I will tell you, when I took this one down, I waited until late in the season and I figured I was safe handling it. And we already had snow on the ground. We had the first snowfall of the year on the ground when I went to take this one down. And I thought I was safe. I started to take it down and I had them dropping out of that hole. It was too cold for them to fly, and so they started crawling up my pant legs. So do use a little caution in a case like that. When they sting, they can sting you as many times as they choose to. So the cooler the better. If you want to try to knock it down and not handle it, time to do it would be before sunup on one of these cold mornings, and hope that it's cold enough they can't fly, and then get out of there as fast as you can.
Okay, thanks, John. Dave, what do you have for us?
Well, I thought I'd bring you a few late season goodies from McCrory Gardens, and I'm calling this some fabulous foliage, because I just grabbed a few things that were really kind of showy out there at the gardens yet. Again, just to kind of entice you to come on out to McCrory and take a look around. A lot of people think about herbaceous plants and flowers, and they think of the flowers, but there's an awful lot of plants, and it seems like there's more and more every year of plants that really just focus on that foliage. And the great thing about that is if you got those textures and those forms of the plants and that color, that's going to be there all season long. It's not just, gee, they look good because they got flowers on for 2 weeks. These look good pretty much from the day we planted them up until they're going to get a hard freeze. This first one is a little bit different. This is a type of hibiscus, and we had never grown it before. It comes out of the Proven Winners group of plants, and wasn't really anything special when we first planted it, but it started growing, and now it's about 5 feet high and about 3 feet wide, a huge plant. This is actually hibiscus maple sugar. Supposedly it will get a few reddish flowers here towards the end of the season, but I have not seen a single flower on it yet this year. It does have leaves kind of reminiscent of a maple, I guess, but certainly a wonderful, warm, reddish burgundy color. That's been quite a showstopper in the information about it. They say use this as a thriller plant. So kind of a fun, when you do a container, you have a thriller, a spiller, and a filler, and they say, well, use this as the thriller. So next one is, I've got several other varieties of coleus here. But coleus are kind of the classic showy foliage plant. And this is, and these are all coleus that are adapted to be growing in full sun. Years ago, we put coleus in the shade, and you didn't put them out in the sun because they just couldn't handle the sun at all. These are all full sun adapted plants. This first one is called molten lava, which is a pretty cool name for a plant. You can see these wonderful shades of red and burgundy in there. And this is a plant that's about, approaching 3 feet in height and probably about 2 feet in width. So really a nice big plant. And kind of along the same lines of the molten lava, we have this one. This one is called Stained Glassworks Eruption. And it's just a mass of different colors all mixed together in there. Not as big and heavy duty as that molten lava one is, but again, this is a plant that's probably 2.5 feet tall or so, not quite as densely covered with stems and leaves and so forth, but still a great plant. Here's another one. This one is Mocha Velvet, a little bit thinner, not as much branching with this plant, but again, a single plant, about 2 feet across, many stems in there, really puts on quite a nice show. Here's one a little bit different. This one is called henna, kind of like the dye henna that they use for making little tattoos and things. This is a really showy plant, nice wide leaves with that yellowish on the top and red underneath and the red stems. Really quite impressive. And again, with all of these, you notice that there's been hardly any flowers at all, just the foliage that we're looking at there. This one is wasabi. Kind of an interesting one with some narrower leaves. Again, that burgundy colored stem with the yellow and the yellowish green chartreuse kind of color. And lastly, I've got one here called, I forget what this one's called. I'm sorry, I didn't write the name down.
Chlorotic.
But yeah, it looks pretty chlorotic, but I was really quite impressed with it. Boy, that is really a nice, if you think of chlorotic, but a really nice bright yellow foliage. And if you look down below where these plants were shaded by the adjacent stems, that color isn't there. So again, this is the color that develops out in full sun, more green tissue with a little bit of shading, but really a showstopper plant, and just, it fits my little category here of fabulous foliage. So don't just get hung up on the flowers, but think about the plant form and the plant shape, the textures, and the foliage color, because that can really be a great aspect to add to your landscape.
And these plants are all at McCrory.
These are all at McCrory, and I just grabbed a few samples. We've got many, many more, so come on out and think about your gardens for next year and what you might want to try to find. We've got pretty much everything labeled as best we can, so pick some of those things out and go check with your local garden center next spring and say, these are the things I want, or try to find some of the seed or plants yourself.
But pick them out, don't pick them.
Right, right. Look at the labels, bring some paper, write the names down. Don't take our labels either, so appreciate that.
Apparently that's happened.
Once in a while.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave. And the colors on those aren't fall colors, as you mentioned. Those are colors from
those have been
the day
that
it starts to
color
grow.
pretty much all season long.
Very good. So.
I think some of them have intensified a little bit now as the temperatures have gotten a little bit cooler, but great color all summer.
Okay, thank you. Mike, what do you have for us?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all the Garden Line viewers for stopping by our booth out at the State Fair. Had a lot of neat individuals stop by, like Orvin Owen, a World War II vet, a true South Dakota hero, stopping by our booth to talk gardening. So just a great way to get to meet people, and really, again, thanks a lot for everybody stopping by to show your support. But last episode, got to talk fall weed control, because now is the time to get some of those nastiest weeds that have been bothering you in your lawn and garden. But we're still a little early yet. Remember, a lot of these fall herbicides will vaporize. So let's wait until those tree leaves start turning a little bit. Let's wait till those tomatoes are done and the garden is done. Keep in mind, tomatoes pretty late this year, so let's wait. Those weeds will still be sensitive as long as they're still green on those leaves. So we can wait until late September, maybe even into October. Spot treating is best if you have some real tough weeds like Creeping Charlie or Creeping Jenny or field bindweed. Sometimes might take 2 applications spaced about 2 weeks apart. So consider fall, but don't be too early. Wait until those leaves and garden are done. Speaking of the garden, if you have perennial weeds in your garden like Canada thistle, quackgrass, smooth brome, real tough perennial weeds like that, when the garden is done, fall is a good time to control them. You can use something, a glyphosate product like Roundup. After your garden is all done, a lot of those perennial weeds will still be green, so hit those with a non-selective herbicide like glyphosate, and that'll set you up to be in pretty good shape for the next spring. So some reminders here for some fall weed control, and in a couple weeks here, go after them.
Mike, how does the dry conditions come into play? Does that affect the effectiveness of your herbicides that you might be using?
Yeah, right. Under these if you're real dry, like a lot of areas are getting now, yeah, that may minimize some of the effectiveness. So if you can wait until you get some rain, it is good. And also, as we get later in the fall, it is helpful if you can have temperatures maybe 50 to 60 degrees somewhere in there. So we don't want to be too late if we can avoid it. But yeah, maybe wait till some moisture, let those weeds start actively growing. That's the best time.
Mike, can you explain a little bit the glyphosate? You mentioned that, but kind of the characteristics of that, if you could explain systemic, the contact aspect, and make sure live tissue, is that correct?
Sure, yeah. Glyphosate is a non-selective herbicide. It'll kill everything, and so we want to make sure the garden is completely done. But yeah, it'll go in the plant and go down into the roots. And for those tough perennial weeds, that's what we need to get. A lot of people ask, well, will it carry over and that sort of thing? No, once glyphosate hits the soil, it binds tightly to the soil, so there'll be no carryover concerns for next year. If you do want to till, maybe let that glyphosate set in the plant for about a week so it can move down to the roots, and then till. So give it about a week before tillage.
And strictly contact.
Yeah, or systemic. It will move in the plant, but you want to get it exposed to that green tissue. So the more green tissue on that weed, the better for a fall application.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yep.
John, you brought a nice little branch for us here, I think, or stem, or depending where you cut it off, I suppose.
Yeah. It's but talking of fall's a good time for planting. And we're coming up to a time period where actually transplanting evergreens is the best time of year. So if you're looking at moving any evergreens, now is the time to do it. But it's a good time to plant deciduous trees too. And so I brought in 1 year's worth of growth. If you can hang on to that, John. They're probably not going to camera long enough to do it. But we've got, if I'm holding this and John at the other end is holding the other end, this is 1 year's growth. 1 year's growth from a Triumph elm. Now, this tree was planted as a 5-foot tall tree 3 years ago. Now it's almost 20 feet tall. And so if you're one of those folks that say, you know what, I'll plant a tree, but I'm not going to live that long, and we get a lot of South Dakotans that know the date of their death, apparently. You know, here's a tree that you could plant, run, kind of like the wasp, run, because it grows that fast, and it puts on tremendous growth. Fairly strong wooded. Will not be affected by Dutch elm disease. It can get the disease, but it doesn't really affect it. Wonderful tree. Now, I have to say one thing. There's a guy up in Lemon that planted a bunch of these, and he called me because he was upset. They're only growing 2 foot a year in Lemon. Heaven forbid. I mean, they ought to be dead, but they're fairly tough trees, though. We have had problems with a little winter injury north of 212. So I know up by Aberdeen they've had a few problems. But southern part of the state, all the way across the state, wonderful tree. That and the Accolade elm are two elms that we'd like to see planted back in the landscape as part of our diversity.
What would be the longevity or lifespan of that tree on the average?
Well, who knows? I've seen Mom. She's 90 years old. So it's going to outlive most of us. Okay. It's not, you know, it's kind of an interesting tree. It's fast growing, but not short lived, because we have an awful lot of trees, some of the poplars that grow like weeds, but then die rather quickly too. This seems to be a tree that'll grow fairly fast, has that beautiful vase-shaped elm form that we like. I've been using it as a American elm substitute on campus. And is not affected by Dutch elm disease, nor, I might mention, the elm leaf beetle or some of the other problems. So it's a wonderful, fast-growing tree that, you know, we don't want to see it overplanted, but certainly we can have more of them.
Go over the name one more time.
Triumph elm.
Okay.
There's also the Accolade elm. Those are the two. They're kind of cousins, and both of them are wonderful trees.
Okay.
And then another sign of fall, mushrooms. And I brought this one in kind of reluctantly. But if you take a look, this has got a bright color. I mean, look at that color. Match that to the shirt. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is called sulfur yellow fungus, and it actually forms a huge mass, almost like that wasp nest that you saw earlier, but nothing's going to come out of this and bite you. But it'll be about this big, shows up on the sides of trees this time of year, and it tells you two things. That tree's pretty rotted. It may fall over because it appears in the fall on very rotted trees. And the other thing, it's delicious. It is delicious. Now, this is also known, some of you know this as chicken of the woods, because it apparently tastes like chicken.
Of course.
But what doesn't? I mean, chicken's kind of the universal food. What's it taste like? Well, it tastes like chicken. If I said it tastes like cat, a lot of you'd say, well, I don't know. I haven't had much cat lately. But I know vegetarians eat it. It has kind of a chickeny texture. And it's fairly good. However, one last statement here. I don't want people watching the show, and this is my reluctance of showing it today, to run out in the yard and pick anything growing out of their tree and figure they can eat it. And even though this is one of the foolproof four, fairly easy to identify, I would caution everyone that if you're going to go out and collect fungus, any fungus, including this one, make sure you go with someone who has picked mushrooms before so they know the exact ones to pick. The wrong one might make you sick, or the wrong one might even kill you. So mushroom hunting is one of those things that's a great sport, great activity, provide you some great food, but it should always be done with someone who's collected before and knows their mushrooms. So don't run out tonight and figure if it's hanging outside of the tree, you can cook it up like chicken, all right? But it's a good one. Cat. It tastes like cat. I'd get some calls on that.
The age of that, is there a difference? You know, you say, well, gee, that thing's been out there for 2 months. Is it still good, or do you need to get it when it first comes out? Or?
Well, yeah, first comes out. It's like anything else. You know, that's the other thing people get. You know, they bite into something and say, well, you know, it tastes old and woody. Well, yeah, tomato that's 2 months old is going to taste pretty bad, too. Fortunately, they don't last that long because the squirrels and everything else like to eat them, too. But you're absolutely right, Dave. You want to pick them when they're fresh, just like anything else.
But to understand, the mushrooms is a result of wood that's already dead. They didn't cause it to die.
Oh, right. They didn't kill the tree. Don't blame this fungus for killing your tree. Your tree's already dying. You'll find them on ash net. But I kid you not, when these things are popping out the side of a tree, that tree is almost hollow. And so you actually have a concern about the fact the tree's probably not stable and should be removed. If you don't remove it, and we've got a few on campus that are out of the way, not that tall, so I'm not worried about them, every fall they'll produce an abundance of this mushroom. So we've got a little feast coming.
Okay. Well, thank you, panel. And we'll get right to the questions tonight. So this one comes to us from Tyler. And John, they have slugs and black cutworms, how to get rid of them and how to treat either one of those. Then they also have a second follow-up question on tomatoes, but we'll let you handle the first two here.
Do we know what they're on?
They do not say. They just say garden.
Okay.
In the garden.
Garden?
Yep.
Okay. Well, the slugs are one of those things where if you don't get rid of them yet this fall, they're likely to be there again next spring. So you want to try to do something about them. We've got a couple home remedies that people like to try. They'll put some things out like beer in saucers or other fermenting products and try to attract them to that and drown them in those. If those sorts of things are working for you and you're having a lot of success, by all means keep doing them, but you'll find probably just as many people or maybe more that'll say, I don't ever have any luck with that. So don't count on something like that necessarily taking care of them either. There are some bait products out there. We've got an iron phosphate product that will work against them, or a metaldehyde product that will work. Both of them you want to use with a little bit of caution. You definitely don't want pets getting into those sorts of things if you put them out there. And they are bait products, so be aware you don't just put them on and you're rid of them. You're going to have to attract those slugs to that area just a little bit. Other than that, you know, some deep tillage will help take away their hiding places, their overwintering places, and you may be able to get rid of some of those numbers that way. Black cutworms are a little different story. If they're truly black cutworms, they're likely to be just about done for the year because their food is disappearing as well. They need that green tissue and they're not going to overwinter and continue to feed in that same area. So you may be just as well off just letting them do the rest of their damage for this year and then hopefully not having them next year. But there are a number of things that can be used against them. Most of our insecticides, as long as it's labeled for the location, will do a reasonable job against them. If you don't want to use the insecticides, you can buy some of the BT products and apply them, and those BT products will work well against black cutworms as well. Again, as long as they're specifically for that. You don't want to go buy the mosquito one and put it on and expect it to work, because that won't work.
Okay. The second part deals with tomatoes, and Dave and perhaps even Mike here. The tomatoes, after 1 week of planting them, the leaves all curled up. 2 weeks later, the other plants came down with the same thing. They became large plants. The leaves are somewhat curled, but very few blossoms. And they just wondered if you had any insight what that might be or what they could do about it.
Well, without seeing some images of what that curling looks like, it's kind of hard to tell for sure what's going on there. There can be some environmental issues that can cause some curling of the leaves, but if it's, I don't know, Mike, you can probably describe some of the symptoms that you might see with some of your issues.
Sure, and I was just trying to think of the best way to kind of decipher. So you're wondering if is it disease or could it be herbicide drift? I mean, those are two possibilities. If it's disease, you might see some curling, but plus some yellowing or some leaf necrosis or some leaf browning. That might indicate disease. If it kind of curls and still stays kind of green, it's just you see this weird growth deformity, could be herbicide drift. And again, caution, with these fall herbicide applications, let's wait until those tomatoes are done. Give them some time. They'll get there. And then let's go after some of those weeds. Because, these things vaporize and can get in your garden. It's pretty easy. Tomatoes, very sensitive. So if it's twisting, still staying green, possible herbicide drift. If you are dealing with some herbicide drift issues, a lot of the times people ask, well, can I still eat it? Generally, we recommend no, you should not eat it because it is an off-labeled chemical exposure. So it might, you might want to get that checked out. But again, sending a picture to your local extension office or to the garden line folks, maybe we can help decipher that more clearly.
Okay. The next question comes from Sioux Falls, John. Austrian pines, they're dying in shelter belts that they have. Turning brown, some are completely dying out. Any idea what the cause may be or treatment, if you recommend one?
Right. Well, my recommendation is not plant Austrian pines. It's a beautiful tree. I like it, but it does suffer from diplodia tip blight, and that's browning a lot of them. The tips are dying. We've also had a problem with Dothostroma needle blight, and that's caused a lot of browning of the needles, yet the tips are good. In fact, it's been a horrible year for diseases on with both those diseases on trees, particularly Austrian pines. We also get Zimmerman pine moth on the trees that cause branches to break, and then finally, they are susceptible to pine wood nematode, causing pine wilt, and that occurs south of Highway I-90. So we're probably looking at multiple problems with those trees. The best would be, get a sample in, to be quite frank, because I'd hate to provide some treatments and not know which disease I'm looking at or what insect problem. And I've actually looked at some that have 3 out of the 4.
And when you say sample, what do you mean?
Well, just a twig sample. Twig that's not dead. Don't send me something that's just completely gone. Something with some needles on it, needles browning. But show the tip too so I can look and see if it has diplodia. Quite often people send me something that's dead, stick, and say, what's wrong with it? Well, it's a stick. All right, so we need some tissue that is declining rather than completely dead.
Okay. Mike, or perhaps Dave here, either one. Rapid City common milkweed. They took a sample from the Missouri River at Chamberlain with the rootstock that they could dig up. Can it be transplanted, and what can give it the best chance of survival? Yesterday is when they took it. The roots are still sitting in water.
Well, you want to talk about making your weed live, which is not easy, by the way. If you want to keep a weed alive, it will surely die. But anyway, go for it.
I think I take it out of the water, number one. If it's been sitting in water for a day, you might have killed the roots. They do need to be kept moist, but not sitting in water. So wrap some moist newspaper around them or something if you aren't going to be planting them right away. But I wouldn't let them just sit in water. That's going to probably be a little too much of a good thing. I guess just try to get them planted in some loosened soil and keep that area moist. I'm not sure exactly which particular milkweed they were trying to get. We've got lots of milkweed around here already that I don't know would be any different than what they saw there. But I remember the first trip I made through South Dakota, I was digging yucca out of the ditch because I didn't have them back in Wisconsin. So maybe there was something special about this particular milkweed.
But milkweed's closely related. What is it, butterfly plant?
Yep,
and I know that one doesn't like to be transplanted, and
right.
These don't either. Now, apparently there's somebody else other than my wife who likes milkweed, but one of the easiest ways to keep it going if you want is just take the pods.
Yeah, wait till the seeds
plant it by
later
seeds.
this year would be my suggestion too.
Yeah.
If you do try to transplant them, you got to go deep. Those roots are deep. You're going to really want to go down to almost 3 feet, I think, to get the full root system on them and transplant them.
And it's just easier to collect the seed and put that in good soil and it'll grow like weed.
Yeah, and it doesn't really, it does spread by roots, but not really like Canada thistle, so it doesn't have a lot of root buds along there. So yeah, you would have to get a large, section of those roots. Did have a lady at the state fair stop by and mention how she did this in her garden, and now it's spreading and spreading, and it's really getting to be kind of a nuisance, and she was having a hard time figuring out how do you control this, or how do we contain this. Now normally it isn't too invasive, so I wouldn't be too worried about that, but just be aware, just be careful, put it off to the side, put it far away from where it might be a problem, because it can spread a little bit, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem, and a great butterfly plant. So
sounds like it might be another trip to Chamberlain to look for seed pods.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't have any problem collecting them if anybody stopped by our place. All you want.
Pretty much all over
or
the
closer.
state, so I wouldn't necessarily have to drive all the way to Chamberlain if you're just thinking for I don't know what the species of a good old-fashioned milkweed is, but we certainly got plenty at McCrory. If you want to come on out, I'd be happy to show you where some are. We try to keep it contained to a couple little patches, and everywhere else they grow, we try to pull them out when we see them. But it's an ongoing thing, and once they get established, they just keep popping up, and we just keep pulling them out.
In my experience, the orange ones don't spread like
No,
that. If you get the true butterfly weed, it likes to stay right where it is. It just doesn't take off and spread much. So.
And we actually like the swamp milkweed. It's a pink flower or a white flower typically, not as big and bushy. It seems to be a really good source for the butterfly, for the monarchs to use as a food source, both as larvae and adults, and a much more attractive plant, I think, than the typical milkweed.
Okay. Next question comes from Platt. When is the proper time to trim junipers, spring or fall?
Spring or fall, summer. You can shear those from when the growth first starts in the spring until about August 15th. So we're done for the year. Now you may get some little more winter injury, so you can shear them throughout the summer. It's commonly done, but stop by about August 15th.
Okay. Shear them when needed.
Shear them when you want.
Okay.
Yep. Kind of like shaving.
From Brookings, rose bushes. However, these are in small pots. They're doing great. How does she overwinter them? She wants them out of the pots and in the ground for the winter.
I'd say go ahead and plant them now. Get that soil nice and worked up so you got some good depth there. Not sure how big of pots or big of plants these are, but loosen that soil up around them, get them down in there. Make sure you keep them well watered, and also think about keeping the bunnies away from them over the wintertime. Rabbits love to chew on rose bushes, so yeah, other than just getting them planted and give them time to get established before it gets too cold, I think that's probably the best way to go.
Okay, good. Thank you, panel. Well, Gardenline paid a visit to the home of Gary Larson, a native plant expert in the biology and microbiology department at SDSU. We learned about several varieties of decorative ornamental grasses native to South Dakota.
Hello, I'm Gary Larson of the Department of Biology and Microbiology at SDSU. We're here today to talk about the use of native plants, or native grasses in particular, in the garden setting. And I've chosen a number of native perennials of our tallgrass prairie region to feature today. We drive by these all the time in roadsides and actually some native prairie parcels that remain. And they tend to go unnoticed, but they can make actually very beautiful specimen plantings as well as borders. The first example that we're going to look at here belongs to the dropseed group. This is prairie dropseed. It's a co-dominant with the tall grasses in native prairie in the eastern part of the state. It's a bunch grass, and that's a very important aspect of this, because when we use native grasses for the landscape, we don't want to use species that are particularly aggressive in the way that they grow. So we tend to want to use native bunch grasses for this purpose. Now, prairie dropseed is very good for that because it does retain its tight growth habit and makes a very nice specimen planting or a border. Next, we're going to look at Indian grass, so we'll go on over to the Indian grass planting. Well, here we're looking at one of the other co-dominant species in the tallgrass prairie. This is Indian grass, which we find flowering now just this late in the season. The color of the panicles is perhaps unsurpassed by any other grass. Now, like all native grasses, these are very easy to propagate. All we have to do is take a piece off of a clump, basically, in the spring of the year and plant it, and typically it will grow from there. Now, these two clumps that I have here were started 4 years ago as offcuts from the base of some Indian grass plantings at the agronomy farm. Here we are in the big blue stem planting in my backyard. We have here 4 clumps that were all made from one that was divided up this spring. Now, there's very little involved in splitting up native grasses to make individual plantings like this. You'd want to do it in the spring of the year before these plants break dormancy, and they will typically break dormancy late May and into spring. Of course, right now we're having the characteristic coloration of big blue stem. This will continue right on into the fall of the year. You'll notice some subtle color changes. They turn the colors that are comparable to some of our showier maples. Actually, you get some pretty reds and yellows and oranges with our native prairies grasses. The other thing we want to consider is how these will look through the winter. These have great standability, and they'll be there for us through the winter landscape. Well, I suggest that everyone consider using native grasses in their landscape if you want to try something unique and different.
All right, like every other week, we have viewers that either call in, either email, or send us questions between shows, and we have some here tonight. The first one we have here, John, is for you. Kind of an extensive letter that came in with this, but I think the picture, the graphic, will tell us a lot. Yeah. Do you want to just look at that and explain what the situation is and what the recommendation will be?
Somewhere.
If we can bring it up, yeah. We've got a tree question is what it's going to be on.
And that's a mulberry tree was what they said. And what they were wondering is, you know, it's dying, and they'd remembered my answer a couple weeks ago about cutting off one of the 2 stems. And the question was, could they do that with this? And the answer is no. When you're trying to remove codominant stems, we really recommend you do that on stems that are less than 3 inches in diameter. Otherwise, you create a tremendous amount of decay. So to cut off one side of this, and you can probably see which side they're looking at, is probably going to hasten the demise of the other one. We've got a couple of trees like that on campus. My recommendation, if they want to keep the tree and hold it together, and you certainly can, would be to hire an arborist. In their area, they should have one. I believe it's Rapid City or so. Or
this particular one, Sioux Falls.
Sioux Falls, even better. Sioux Falls, there's a number of arborists down there that could properly cable and brace that, and I recommend hiring someone. Homeowner jobs never go well, but by proper situation of cables and bracing rods, they can probably extend the life of that plant for a good number of years. But to cut off part of it right now isn't going to help, and the question also was, will it improve the fruiting in that? Not likely to do so.
Okay. The next one comes to us from Watertown, and these are some pumpkins from a pumpkin patch. It looks like they get powdery mildew and maybe even some vine borers. Also, the pumpkins themselves get lesions on them, start to weep, and they get really soft and just kind of deteriorate. They form kind of a scab over those areas in some cases. Any idea what we may have here, and any recommendations or remedies?
Well, I took a look at these images, and I've got 2 potential guesses here. My first, looking at that image, is something called black rot, which is more of a problem during wet years, wet seasons, and we certainly have that with the moisture and the warm temperatures that we have this summer. So that may be what we're looking at. The other possibility is Phytophthora blight, but generally Phytophthora blight is going to be more of a whitish, soft rot that develops on the side of the fruit, and you'll also see some damage showing up on the vines. So that may be the other possibility. I actually sent this person an email this morning with a link to a pumpkin disease publication that hopefully will give them a little bit more information. They're both rather difficult to control. They both can overwinter in the soil. So looking at crop rotation is probably the best thing that we can do. There might be some resistance out there for the black rot, but the Phytophthora really doesn't have a whole lot of resistant genes out there for us to choose from. So good luck. Try planting in a new spot, and maybe try some different varieties. Look for some that say they might be resistant, but it can be a tough one.
Okay. The next one comes to us from Flandreau, and they have some sweet potatoes here that they have deformed skin on once they dig them up. But you can see the difference between the normal skin and the yellow bumpy sort of skin that is on there. They want to know what may cause that. On the other end of the row, they have some carrots. As you can see here, and some damage has occurred to them. This is the second year they've had this problem, and they do rotate other crops so they aren't in the same place. They don't indicate if they rotate a root crop with another root crop, of course, but we would hope that they would rotate there above ground and below ground and that sort of thing. Any ideas there, Dave, John?
Well, I tried to do a little looking also for some sweet potato diseases, and I'm not certainly an expert on sweet potato tuber diseases. Didn't really see anything that really looked quite like this, and it's kind of hard to really see from the picture. This would be a better one to actually have one of the tubers to take a look at to see exactly what's going on there. My best guess is that we're looking at some water issues, that maybe the plants got dried out and they got moisture and then they got dried out again, so you got kind of uneven moisture causing spurts of growth. We'll see that happen with potato tubers too. We'll get some secondary tubers developing on the original tuber. That's kind of what it looks like to me. I'm not real sure. As far as the carrots go, I can't really see for sure if those are areas that are black and soft, if there's some kind of a rot developing in there, or if maybe there's some maggots or something in there. I really can't tell a real good view from what that image shows.
My guess is that there are some maggots in there, but whether the maggots are the primary cause or whether they followed the rot in is going to be the question. And
yep.
Just looking at these, I would guess that these are not a primary sort of thing. I would guess that in these images that those maggots moved in after they started to rot and that something else was causing some issues first. But it's hard to tell at this point, I think.
Yeah, I think again the crop rotation, again, You know, we talk about rotating crops within a garden, but for many people that have a relatively small garden plot, if they're running their tiller back and forth across that garden and maybe going a couple different directions, you've pretty much spread whatever inoculum was there throughout your garden. So your rotation is something that we try to do, but it may not be really all that effective, especially in a small garden plot. But certainly stay away, as Steve mentioned, stay away from other root crops. That's not to say that diseases and insects that attack carrots are also going to attack sweet potatoes. There's probably some selective things going on there too, but certainly stay away from those kinds of crops in that area for a while, and for a while we're talking probably 2 or 3 years, and see if you can get back to some better production later.
Okay.
And the same thing does apply on the insects, just to jump in on that. Insects are, by their very nature, very mobile things, and so for example, we had the squash borers in the pumpkins. They said they thought they had some of those there. You could plant pumpkins 100 feet away, and those moths will just simply get up and fly over there. They don't have any problem at all doing that. You'd have to put some real distance in there to try to get rid of them in a case like that. And the same is honestly going to be true if you do have some of those maggots that get into some of the root crops there. They will simply fly to the next spot unless you are quite a distance away.
Okay. The next one comes to us from Madison. There are a number of trees and shrubs coming up in our backyard border areas. Was wondering if you could tell me what they are.
Oh yeah, this is the one. In fact, the same thing we looked at before. This is mulberry. And mulberry is planted anywhere there's a bird because it does produce almost a raspberry-like fruit. And the birds eat it and kind of poop it out everywhere. And so you'll get all sorts of these little trees coming up everywhere. And the leaves look so different. They have 3 different leaf shapes to it. So I'll get people say, I don't know what this plant is. This is also a plant that is either male or female. And so it's possible to get mulberries that never produce any fruit, and then you'll get some that will produce an incredible amount of fruit. Stained driveways, decks, anything they hang over. Some people like the fruit, most don't. It's often recommended plant this in your garden because the birds will eat it before your garden. Since they taste like chicken, I doubt that. I haven't seen where the birds prefer it, but yeah, those are mulberries, so kill them all.
They might not prefer it, they sure eat enough of them.
Yeah, they do, and they seem to find any surface you want clean to decide to deposit the seeds.
And then you get little weed ones coming up around every other tree that you have too.
Yep.
They're just.
Yep. If you're West River, you don't have any trees. Yeah, they're a good tree, but most people don't want them.
Okay. Next one comes to us from Rapid City, and we have a number of images of this, John, and looks a lot like what we talked about a little bit earlier, catalpa tree. And about 2 years ago, it never really came back fully, and now they're starting to notice some of the growths that are showing up along the bark and fungal growths that we noticed here. And the last question they have is, if they cut the tree down, if you suggest that, some shoots that are coming up near the base around the trunk, would that ever form a nice looking tree?
Maybe. Now that's a very good question, and yeah, I would cut it down. That's not coming back. But the reason I say that's a good question is with many of our ornamental trees, if you cut them to the ground and the sprouts come up, the sprouts will actually be a different plant than the cultivar they purchased. With catalpa, they are growing on their own roots. There are no cultivars, and so they will come up. The question I have, though, is catalpa is very susceptible to verticillium wilt. And a number of years ago, we had kind of an outbreak of it, which actually went all the way to Colorado. And since that's a soil-borne disease, not one easily getting rid of, I'm concerned that if they cut it to the ground, the sprouts may come up, grow for a number of years, and then begin to die back and never completely die, but kind of look like the tree they have. So my recommendation might be just to remove the catalpa completely and not plant catalpa or elm or maple in that same location. Oak would be a good choice. They're not affected by verticillium wilt, and so you could do that. But if I remember correctly, verticillium wilt can remain in the soil for up to 15 years, so you're not likely to wait this one out. But I would go with a different tree species rather than depend on a sprout.
Okay. This one comes to us from Del Rapids, dealing with tomatoes. Once the tomatoes start to ripen, something takes a bite out of them, about 1 inch in diameter. If it's still hanging on the plants, they may even take a couple more bites. Any idea what that might be or could be causing that or to help protect them?
Any small children
That's what I was thinking now.
that like tomatoes?
Yeah.
Measure their kids' bite.
Loves reading vegetables, that's good, I guess.
Yeah. There's a variety of small animals that will eat tomatoes. Some of the gophers, I don't know if a rabbit will take a bite out of a ripe tomato. I know they'll take a bite out of a green tomato, but woodchucks,
Deer.
squirrels. Yeah, deer is a good option. So there's a variety of things there. I guess I'd kind of keep an eye on the garden, look for any tracks that might be there. Maybe water the garden around where those tomatoes are so you can get a better idea of what some of the tracks might be. And that'll give you a better idea as to what might be doing the nibbling.
Okay, this one comes to us from Volga. Raspberry bushes, they want to get rid of them. If she cuts them back and sprays with Roundup, will that kill them? That sequence may not be the best, but...
Well, it's going to be a slow death. I've got a couple of areas where we're changing over varieties, and I found cutting them back and putting, if you cut them back and they're sprouting up again and you spray them with Roundup, it's not going to be a complete kill. You are going to end up digging some up. I don't know if there's anything better.
Right, and you want the more growth you have, the better, because you want to kill that root system, and so you're probably not going to get that this fall. You cut them back in the next spring, maybe a foot or so of growth, then spray them with Roundup. So yeah, it might be a long process.
Yeah, and just figure they're going to be digging up some. I mean, you're just not going to get rid of them completely, but it's as good as it goes. But yeah, you mentioned sequence. Don't cut them to ground, so all you have is that little stub and spray and think you're going to get much.
Okay, but go ahead and try spraying and then...
Either that or hope they live and then they will die. It seems to be the way it works.
No, but yeah, that's right. Yeah, wait for that regrowth. It might be the key, and then you're probably going to be doing some follow-up. Yeah.
All right. Mitchell, lilac, 30 years old, very tall, 12 feet high. How far to trim back and when to do this?
Okay, they'll love this answer. If you're going to cut it back, you can go to it's this tall. Okay, that's about 2 inches. You can cut it that low to the ground and it will re-sprout. And I've done that on numerous lilac hedges that high. And in 3 years, they're back up to that height, but a little bit more open, flowering a little bit nicer. The only thing I will say, though, is when you cut them back, you've got to watch for weeds because you've just opened that soil to the bright sunlight and you'll get lots of weeds coming up. You'll also get a lot of weak shoots coming up, too, so you're going to have to thin them that are coming up around the base. But if it's a healthy plant, just overgrowing, 2 inches, and do that in the spring just before bud break. You'll forfeit any flowering next year, of course, but it'll come back very nicely. Again, done it numerous times now. The problem we often see is people cut them belt high. I refer to it because they don't want to bend over, so they cut them about 4 feet. And they'll sprout right up at that 4-foot point, but you're going to have a very open plant near the bottom and very thick near the top. So really the only way to prune a lilac is either don't prune it at all, or 2 inches tall when you're done. And it works. It works. It'll scare the heck out of you when you first do it.
Okay. John Yankton, have you seen a decrease in pollinating insects this season?
Well, a decrease in general, kind of hard to say. The timing was off on a lot of them. And we have some concerns about numbers of native pollinating insects overall, especially some of the native bees. We're simply running out of habitat for them. We've got a lot of fence rows that are no longer used as fence rows. They're being tilled right up to the ditches, and we're actually limited in our numbers of flowers for some of those things. And as much as people might think that's a little bit odd, I get a lot of people who will ask me about honeybees and what can I plant for honeybees. Well, when you consider how far a honeybee colony will travel in a case like that, they will go in bad conditions up to 9 to 10 miles in one direction from the hive. And so when you consider the number of acres that you'd have to plant to really help out a hive like that, we're talking huge number of acres. For native pollinators, they won't go quite that far, but you're still going to want acres upon acres of various flowers. And because we don't have some of those situations anymore, we are limited a little bit in numbers of them. But if you got some concerns, definitely put up some nesting habitat for them, some of those little nest blocks for the native ones. Leave some areas that are just kind of undisturbed and hopefully encourage some of them to breed and live in those areas.
Okay. Dave, Belden, Nebraska. They bought some of the decorative jalapeno peppers from McCrory Gardens. Are they edible?
Most of them are, but also most of them are extremely hot. Now, some people like spicy peppers, but there are some of those that are just downright so hot that I would advise extreme caution, you know, a little taste of them. There are some, however, that are suggested that they are not edible. Some of the black pearl, for example, a pretty common, popular, very dark, almost about a half-inch across or so, dark black fruit. Those are suggested that they are not really edible, but most of the others, ornamental ones, they can be edible. They're essentially types of chili peppers and jalapenos and so forth, and they're going to be hot. They're going to knock your socks off, but just be careful. Try them with caution, and if you like them that way, then they're okay, but be careful.
Okay. Mike from Watertown, they want to overseed grass and spray for weeds too. How to schedule this for the fall?
Yeah, you're going to want to kill your weeds first, and then go after, and then plant your grass. Now, this is going to be a tight schedule because we talked a couple weeks ago. It's mid-September, right? That you want to get that grass seeding done by. Maybe you could go a week or so later. So you could probably get a little bit of an early start on maybe controlling some of your weeds, and then maybe after a week, then seed in your grass, and you should be okay. You can't seed in your grass first because those little grass seedlings will be sensitive to herbicides. Even broadleaf herbicides can severely damage some of those small grass seedlings. So you're going to want to do the weed control first, then seed the grass.
Okay.
And wait about a week in between.
All right. John, this one comes from us in Noel. Plans on getting a live Christmas tree. He would like to know how to transplant it.
A live Christmas tree?
Yep.
I mean, I'm not sure I'm following this. He wants a Christmas tree they can bring in the house for Christmas?
Well, my thought would be they're probably going to have a live Christmas tree for the Christmas, and then what do I do with it after that?
Oh, you know what? That's cruel. If you lived in Michigan, that works. But you take something that's sitting in your house at 72 degrees, kind of like a cat, all right, and you toss that out in the cold, I mean, that's pretty cruel. And they don't do very well in South Dakota. Quite often they winter burn horribly. So my best recommendation would be if plant it outside, decorate it outside, and look at it from the inside. The other option would be just go out and cut a tree and put it up in your house. But really, the living Christmas trees that people say, I'll put it in my house and I'll take it outside and plant it, this far north with our harsh winters don't do very well. Now, if the person says, well, we're also moving to Tennessee, then I'd say, done deal. But no, I'm serious. Down there it'll work.
Carry the trio the whole way.
Well, but you know, that's the problem with, the problem with Google is people Google these things. And it'll say, yeah, you can do it. And then they don't bother to realize that, you know, half of Google doesn't apply to South Dakota.
Okay. The next one.
Norfolk Island pine.
Yeah. You know what? I had a guy that put a Norfolk Island pine. He figured he could put it outside afterwards.
No, don't put it outside. Just keep it in the doors.
Yeah, right. I mean, it went
decorated each year.
The minute they got outside, the thing just about died. So.
Right.
The next one comes to us from Garrettson. Can you prune apple trees this time of year? It's done bearing.
No. Really, I recommend that. Wait until just before bud break next spring. And the reason for that is we often end up with some winter injury. And you're going to need to prune that first and then decide if there's anything else to prune. If you prune now, you may end up pruning again still. So just before bud break next spring is what we recommend for fruit trees.
Okay. They want to identify a cactus. They planted them last Easter. What's the best way to do that? Samples?
Some pictures of them would probably be a good way to get them identified. If these are some native cacti, that list is pretty short. But if they're just looking at cacti in general, there's a lot of different cacti out there, so some good images of the plant are good and sharp focus. I can give it a shot.
I thought it might have been a joke, the Easter cactus or the Christmas cactus.
Well, yeah, it could be an Easter cactus or a Christmas cactus or one of the holiday cacti, but there's a lot of other kinds of cactus out there.
Okay, so get a couple good pictures and send them in for the thing. Okay, very good. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this evening. Just to let you know, Garden Line does repeat twice each week on South Dakota Public Broadcasting Digital Channel 3, also known as the Create Channel. The encore broadcast can be seen Fridays at 11 a.m. Central and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Central. Check your local listings to find SDPB Digital Channel 3 where you live. Now we're going to wrap up. Thanks to our panel of experts, John Kiekefer, Brookings County Extension Educator, David Graper, Extension Horticulturalist, Mike Mickney, Extension Weed Specialist, and John Ball, Extension Forestry Specialist. Thanks to our phone volunteers, the Watertown Master Gardeners, and thanks to you for watching and calling in. We will sign off with a piece of Garden Line history. Something has happened for a number of years in the past. a recording of a former SDSU entomologist and gardenline panelist, Wayne Byrne, playing Amazing Grace on his bagpipes in McCrory Gardens. On behalf of the entire crew, have a good evening and happy gardening.
Funding for Garden Line is provided in part by your membership in the Friends of South Dakota Public Broadcasting. And by Swiftel Communications.